social media is has already taken over the world, and now here we go. It's taking over sports. So for those of you who don't know kind of where this has gone, like, let's go ahead and play it for you. We talked, the Clay stuff broke when you and I were together on Friday afternoon. So we've had some things to say about that. There's more to say. Shams had some comments earlier today, and there was one specific sentence in his commentary that really stood out to me. So we'll play that in a second. But for those of you who are like, what did Brandon Aiyuk say on TikTok? Well, here's what he said, and he was talking to Washington Commanders quarterback draftee and former Arizona State Sun Devil, Jaden Daniels.
They said they don't want me back. I swear.
Yeah, they said that they don't want me back. For real. All right. Well, why is that clip only the only part that's on there? Obviously, that's not the entire conversation.
Right.
That'd be my question. Does anybody have what Jaden asked him prior to him saying that? And why is only that part on TikTok?
Well, the whole thing was on TikTok, I believe.
What was the whole conversation then?
It was a back and forth about,
Does he name the 49ers?
No, not that I saw.
Did Jaden Daniels say, what about the Niners? And he said, they don't want me back.
No, of course not.
I did not hear that. I heard Brandon Aiyuk's girlfriend say something like, they got me blogging this stuff, and then with the expletive mixed in there, and a bunch of garbled stuff that I couldn't really hear, and then that.
Okay. So why did they only post that? Why did they only post that?
Because they're sending a message.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Like when your reaction to Klay Thompson on Friday, I think is the reaction of many where, and it's people of a certain age. We have a hard time with this. Like I joked with my dad. I did a Father's Day post for my dad on Instagram, and I love when people do this. My dad's not on Instagram.
Right, and you shared you added your mom to make sure she would show
my mom's on Instagram. I'm like, hey, Mom, will you show this to Dad? Because he's still on Facebook.
Yeah.
And so if you tell Dad something on Instagram, he's like, I don't know how to do the doohickey. Well, go back an earlier generation, that's us. And we're like, really, guys? This is how you directly send your commentary to bosses, coworkers, friends, whatever. You do it with veiled shots on social media. It makes us roll our eyes. But yes, that's exactly how it's done. And my two reactions to Clay and Aiyuk, and this is why I find them to be so different. Clay's, even though all of this is passive-aggressive, it's all passive-aggressive.
Right.
But Clay's was direct. Hey, Warriors, bleep you. Brandon Aiyuk's is, let's make this like mysterious. Don't put the word 49ers in there. Just the one clip. Yeah, man. They said they don't want me. For real. I mean, there's 1% of me that's like, I don't even know who you're talking about. But the 99% of me that thinks he's talking about the 49ers, there's no finality here. There's no bleep you. It's June, and I don't like what you're saying to me, which makes him just the next 49er player. That's it. Every Niner player who's gone through this the last few summers has been mad in June. Right? Was Bosa mad in June?
Yeah.
Was Debo mad in June?
No doubt.
Brandon's mad in June. I don't know. To me, one of these means something, the other doesn't.
I agree. I think they both mean the same kind of thing. Clay's for me is maybe not so much bleep you as it is I'm leaving. I think Clay does what he does because he knows that the offer that he's going to get or has already gotten from the Warriors is not going to be good enough, and so he's leaving. So that to me is less mysterious than the Brandon Aiyuk one. And the thing about the TikTok is the video starts with him looking at a highlight of himself as a 49er. And he's on with Jaden Daniels. And so then Daniels says, turn the camera around, because the camera is actually pointing at Aiyuk's girlfriend who is filming him. Mm-hmm. So then he turns the camera around to show Daniels himself. And then that's when he says what he says. So he didn't say the 49ers, but the whole thing was staged so that he's watching himself on the Niners. And then, they don't want me.
You just said it.
Staged.
The whole thing was staged.
Beautifully staged. It's well done. You see Daniels is, he's laughing and he's giving him the peace sign. And then you cut to Aiyuk and he's smiling. He's smiling. This is not somebody who's emotionally broken or disconsolate or shaken by the way things are going.
No, he's mad, and he was already mad. Like, the funny thing is, there's been much more on Brandon's social media that's been much more damning than this. Go back 2 months, and he and his girl are in the parking lot at Levi's Stadium being like, don't think we're going to ever be back here ever again.
Right.
And everyone's like, yeah, I wonder what he means. And then flash forward 2 months later, they don't want me back, and people think that a trade is coming, or that if the 49ers didn't want him back, I don't think they'd have offered him $26 million. I don't think he'd still be on the team. Now, I don't want to speak as if I can tell you unequivocally this is going to work out, but nothing that I've seen on June 17th tells me that this looks any different than whatever the 49ers have been doing every summer. The only thing that's different every summer is there are different tweaks to the way it sounds based on who the player is. And the player's own personality comes out a little bit. Nick, who's a really quiet guy, I'm just going to go work out and eat omelets. And he's gone. That's it. You never heard a word. Well, Debo, a little bit more front-facing, right? This is a guy that, boombox guy right out front. He's going to let you know, and he's going to request a trade, and he's going to be out in the public making comments. Brandon, a little bit somewhere in between, but I'd argue is a little bit more out front with his displeasure, his words, his aggressiveness, and that's all fine. That's just his personality,
right?
And how he wants to handle his frustration. But I'll say the same thing today that I'm going to say every time. Until August 1st, I am not concerned in the slightest about Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers.
And I don't think that they are either. And honestly, Brandon's probably not that concerned either. He's just doing this as a way to continue to remind fans that he's unsigned and that he's relatively unhappy. And if the offer was a reported $26 million a year and he doesn't think that that's enough, well, what can you do other than have your agent go back to the Niners and say, try harder, do better? Other than that, you have to kind of just sit there and do this. And this is what we do now in the modern day and age. We use our social media to send messages to fans and to our teams to let them know how we really feel.
Well, not only that, and I agree with you completely, but I'll add this. At work, no matter who you are, at work, when do you really start to just be like, all right, that's it, man. Meet me in the break room. I got some stuff to tell you, and I'm going to just torch the bosses and the corporate structure. And you really get to that point, I'd argue, when you feel totally boxed in. In other words, you're out of choices and chances. They're not offering what you want, but there's not a damn thing you can do about it. And so you buck. You buck and you complain and you whatever. You lash out. And I would argue that that's exactly what's happening with Brandon Aiyuk. Do you realize what kind of a chance he'd be taking if he tries to play uber hardball with the 49ers? He's going to get crushed. The 49ers not only have control of him for another 2 years if they want, they drafted his former teammate, who he thinks is great, who also, by the way, supposedly had an unbelievable OTAs. Imagine if you're Brandon, you're like, okay, I'm sitting out. And it turns out that Pearsall is everything they hope him to be. Now what kind of a boat are you in? You left $14 million on the table. The Niners still have complete control over your rights. And your importance completely cratered because they found someone else who apparently can do the exact same thing. That would be the roll of the dice he's taking if he wants to look at $26 million and freak out to the point where he's like, I'm not showing up till it's 29. Well, yeah, you will.
Of course he will.
I think the number's going to go up, but yes, you will.
And they know that, and he knows that. And that's why all of this, to me, and we can talk about TikToks and the scrubbing of social media and Instagram and all the rest of it, this is all mostly nonsense because it's June. And so Aiyuk knows that he doesn't really have to show up until he has to show up. And when he has to show up in order to make sure he gets that good money, that game check, and if you're making $14 million, even if he has to play on his 5th-year option, that's about $850,000 a game. So when push comes to shove, and that's the check that he's going to say no thank you to, he's going to show up. And they know it, and he knows it, and everything in between now and then is just Instagram and TikTok nonsense.
No matter who you're dealing with, you need to kind of know, I always try, you got to know the characteristics. It's just like us. We're radio partners. You know some things that would trigger me. I know some things that would trigger you. We avoid those unless we're trying to tick each other off, which is pretty rare.
A couple times a month.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you know, you got to know.
Angry, Jeff.
That's awesome. Yeah, you gotta know the characteristics of who you're dealing with. If I'm Brandon Aiyuk and his agent, know this. I want you to write it down in ink. Parag Marathe is allergic to giving in early. Allergic. The hard no, brick wall. Parag is never going to give you what you want in a month that starts with J.
Yeah.
Period. So know that. So don't get mad in June because there's another J month coming up in a second, and you're not going to get what you want then either. But the other characteristic of the Niners is that they do almost always end up making those guys happy in the end. So wait for the A month.
Yeah, I mean, he knows that. I'm sure he knows that, and his agent knows that. And I don't know if they're advising him to do this every couple of weeks just to keep his name out there and to keep the Niners' feet held to the fire and all the rest of it. Because when he does what he does on TikTok, he knows we're all going to talk about it because the fans are like, you should see the TikTok. There's like 1,100 comments,
of course,
underneath his post.
Yeah, come to Pittsburgh.
Right.
We're
Your Commanders.
We're sponsored by Safeway. And we love your